Special Educator Summer Series Week 3 is here. Welcome back. I'm Jennifer from Positively Learning. I'm so glad that you're joining me. So this is week 3. We are building an independent work system that's actually going to work, and we're doing it in bite-sized pieces all summer long, which means I will be here every Wednesday with the next step. And I also am going to be back on Fridays with a new podcast episode. They are the same topics every week, and you can catch both of them on YouTube at Positively Learning. Although they're the same topics, they are not the exact same words. So I definitely think it's beneficial to catch both of them. So today is week 3, which means that we've had 2 weeks. And I gave you just a tiny bit of homework, usually just answering a question for each week. If you have not done that yet, I highly recommend hitting pause, going back and catching up. They're about 10, 11, 12 minutes. They are very quick, but it definitely builds upon itself, so it will make sense. Now, in last week, we started the tasks framework with the first letter T for Think It Through. And I had you write down 3 skills that you want to focus on as we build the system. If you have those 3 skills, you're ready for today. If not, please go back and watch the last episode because I ask you questions so that we can identify which 3 skills are going to have the most impact. Today, we are going to move forward with the tasks framework with letter A, which is access your materials. Now, I do want to be specific about what that means because it might not be what it sounds like. Instead of accessing your materials like going through your TPT purchases or a Taskbox bundle or maybe your Google Drive, instead, this is more about what materials do you have access to, taking inventory. We're going to be talking about what we actually need to build out these tasks because I do think that we don't talk about that a lot. We talk about the skills, but task boxes are these physical objects. They're tangible and they have 2 parts. What goes inside them, that's the thing students are going to manipulate, sort, count, match. And then also the outside, what holds them together, where the task lives, like a container, bin, bag, or envelope. Before we can put tasks into an independent work system rotation, we need to get both of those things down. And a lot of teachers might get stuck in the teacher prep or overwhelmed because it's not that they don't know what to grab as far as the tasks, but then they go to start and realize they don't have the supplies they actually need to build it. So this step for this week 3 is all about fixing that before you sit down to do the prep. We're not going to be doing any prep today. Next week, we are going to be talking about the next step in the tasks framework, which is what makes a task successful. That's more of the task building part. Today, we're doing more of the taking inventory part. Okay, so today we are in the tasks framework. There is letter A. Next week, we have setting up task boxes for success, and we're going to be continuing to move through the tasks framework, and then we'll do some troubleshooting. Hopefully, this is the least overwhelming way to get set up. I know if I gave you all the steps in a big webinar, a big workshop, it can be a whole lot. Now, you don't have to do this now because I hope you're enjoying a summer break, but these are very binge-worthy because they are very fast, and you could just wait and watch all of these videos in a row and get exactly what you need. Okay, so let's talk about the materials. I want to look at this access from 2 sides. The task components, which is like counting bears, sorting chips, coins, buttons, mini erasers, maybe some clothespins. We also want to talk about the task housing, the outside. That might be food storage bags, small bins, poly envelopes, library pockets. You probably already have access to some version of these. Maybe you have more than you think. This access step is about knowing what you have so that you don't go spend some money or feel totally stressed out before we even get started with the tasks. Okay, so let's break it down. I'm going to ask you to take inventory, not like go gather these materials, but just writing it down. What do you have access to? Maybe this is at school or in a supply closet. Maybe this is in your friend's home, your friend's classroom. If you haven't started teaching yet, or if you don't even want to think about school, totally understand. It's just writing down what you think you have access to. So the task components are what goes inside the task box. These are the actual pieces that students are going to be working with to complete a task, to engage, to enhance the task. So think about your counting manipulatives. Would your students benefit from having bears or counting chips, cubes, anything a student can count, sort, or move? Maybe it's coins for money tasks, buttons, clothespins for fine motor tasks that also builds up independent work skills. You might have mini erasers. Remember when we bought all of those mini erasers from Target? Now you can use them. Maybe you have some craft supplies like pom poms, craft sticks, all those foam shapes. Those can possibly be repurposed into task components. So here's your key question when you're thinking about taking inventory for this step. Can this be used to practice one of those three skills that you identified in the last step, the last episode? If the answer is yes, that is going to go on your access inventory. That is all we're doing right now. Then we're going to flip it around and think about where those tasks are going to live, the task housing. Now, I'm looking at this list and I've tried most of these. Envelopes, like poly envelopes or a little bit more of a sturdy envelope, they can be really a versatile option for tasks because they're durable sometimes. They lay flat. Students can slide pieces in and out, and then they can stack clearly, like on a shelf. Food storage bags are also a great idea because they are low budget. You probably have access to some, and then they can store all those loose pieces. Now, you might want to think about small plastic bins or containers to give tasks a three-dimensional home. That's really great if students are sorting them. Even like food containers that have the divisions in them, that can be really great. I highly recommend, well, I definitely recommend, you're going to want some kind of lid to go with it. The key question for this step, as you're starting to think about what might work for your classroom, is to think about, is this solution durable enough to survive repeated use? You also want to make sure that the container, whatever you choose, is clear enough to the student. Would they know like what they're supposed to do? Would they be able to open it for the most part on their own? Would they know exactly how to use it, or would they need you to explain it to them? And if they need you to explain it to them, I don't recommend it because that's not going to make it independent. That's going to keep you at the center of our independent work system, which is probably what has gone on in the past and hasn't worked so well. We want our students to be as independent as possible. Might not be the first choice. I know when I started, I was not going to buy those rainbow photo storage boxes until I knew if this was something I even wanted to do. I remember I started task boxes out of desperation because previously I was running a resource room and I had centers, like classroom size centers, where I would put one out for students to rotate in and out. And it wasn't working at all. It was like a one size fits no one. And I wanted the individual aligned with IEP goals and objectives for my students to use, but I'm not going to spend money on these. So what I started off with was food storage bags because you could just Ziploc them. I had like a box of 100 of them and I made the tasks. And I will say the plastic storage bags for my students, they didn't even last. I mean, my students could possibly open them mostly by tearing them, but they could not close them, even if they were like still in one piece. So it did not work, but it was enough time for me to see, okay, we're on to something. Giving individual tasks that students need at their independent level is going to work. It made me leap into that decision to invest in those rainbow storage boxes, which I will recommend. That best solution to buy those is at Michael's when they're on sale with your teacher discount. I'm always asked. There's lots of other places that you could get them, but Michael's has been the best. You can't get a teacher discount online, but you can get the sale price online. So keep that in mind as well if you don't have one nearby. All right, quick case study. I love sharing these on these videos every week because we have over 1,000 members in the Task Box Club, and I ask questions all the time. What's working? What do you need help with? What's easier? What's harder? And so on. I did have a teacher who identified the overwhelm of teacher prep as the number one problem with setting up an independent work system. And that is extremely valid. However, this same teacher described a shift when she decided to stop trying to find the perfect pre-made task that students were going to use, and she DIY'd it. She started building tasks from what she already had: counting bears from the math cabinet, envelopes or bins from a supply closet, sorting chips that she had been using in a small group, but then she realized she could repurpose them for tasks. She had an assembly line, dropping the manipulatives in each task. For me, working with students who had early literacy, early math goals like counting and one-to-one correspondence, I found that the perfect number was just to add 10 manipulatives per task box. So just imagine a rainbow photo storage box assembly line, all open, dropping in the tasks, which we're going to talk about more next week, and then just dropping a handful of manipulatives. It was perfect. An assembly line, I closed them up. We were ready to go. All right. So that really helped out this member, and she shared that with us. So thought that would be helpful to know. All right. Now we are in the tasks framework. And one thing that I have been asked before when I've taught the framework is, wouldn't this step come later? Don't you need to know what tasks you have before you set them up, before we need to think about the bins or the manipulatives? And it makes sense, but this is just our inventory stage. And I think that if we do get to the next stage and we're pulling the tasks out and we're ready to set them up and we haven't done this inventory, it just becomes like this overwhelming. You think to yourself, oh my goodness, I need all of these manipulatives. But if we've just done this inventory, which is going to be our homework today, then you can say, okay, I have this manipulative. I still need this one. Maybe you've identified a money task for your 3 skills. And you can say, okay, I have the counting chips, I have the cubes, I have the base 10 blocks for this skill, but I don't have the money. What we're doing is we're taking that big, overwhelming list of things that you need, and we're just being very, very specific. Otherwise, it just gets overwhelming. And then setting up an independent work system stays on your to-do list rather than getting done. We're trying to take this in these bite-sized steps. And the supply audit at this step, lesson 3, is going to fix that. It's going to prevent that overwhelm, I hope. All right. So your job is to go through both sides of the access step, the component side and the task housing side, and do a supply audit. Take inventory on what you have. You're not gathering it, you're just writing it down. And then look at your 3 skills that you identified and match them up. What do you have? What is missing? And that specific list at the end is all that you're going to need to do. And maybe you could go shopping in your friend's classroom. Maybe that is something that can go in a donor's choose. Maybe your school will have them somewhere. That would be great. But we're not thinking about these vague categories. It's more specific. I need counting bears in 2 colors for a sorting task. I need bins or poly envelopes in a medium size. I need small bins for a 3 category sort. That's for coin identification, because that is the skill. All right, that's the access step. I would love for you to let me know how it went. Was it easy? Does this feel less overwhelming than building out the whole system? This is where we are in the steps. Next week, we will be going back into the framework and we'll be talking about what makes a task successful. It's the setup stage. We're going to be talking about what makes a task actually work for independent use. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will catch you on Friday with a new podcast. I'll be back next Wednesday with the next step. Your job is not to build anything, but just to do your supply audit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit subscribe, Positively Learning on YouTube, and I will catch you next time. Thanks.